So I want to reaffirm that these Friday meditations and Q&A sessions are also being recorded and are being made available on the course website, okay? And you can find the course website by going to your the welcome email that you received from Barry when you registered, and you find the link to the course website there for all the course materials. So let's begin by just briefly revisiting the main meditation that I introduced last night, which is the 3 letting bees. The letting be of body, of breath, and of mind. Okay, shall we explore that just briefly, and then we'll do some Q&A. So just begin by kind of relaxing, settling into your seat, back comfortably straight. Eyes can be open, gazing gently downwards. So that means you're looking, maybe you're looking 4 feet in front of you. For this meditation, eyes open is good, but for any of the meditations, if you find that just too distracting, you're not used to the eyes open, it's okay to close them. I'm just encouraging everyone to explore with eyes open over time as you can. So the eyes could be gazing, when your eyes are gazing downward, that helps you to settle your mind. Whereas if you become kind of drowsy, then you can actually raise your gaze, raise your eyes, and just look straight ahead. So either way, eyes open is fine. And we just sit in a comfortable way, back straight. Let your breath just settle into its own natural rhythm, but inhaling into the abdomen, so you feel the abdomen expand with each inhale. Can you feel that? Feeling your abdomen expand with each inhale. And now just let the feeling of the abdomen expanding and contracting with each breath draw you into that feeling more and more. Just let the feeling of the abdomen expanding and contracting draw you into that feeling more and more, very naturally, with each breath. So just sort of relaxing into it, into that feeling of the abdomen. And now in a relaxed way, just let your awareness settle into the feeling of the body as a whole. And notice any feeling of holding on within the body, any feeling of tightness or holding on. And let that relax. Letting the bodily feelings just settle in their own way. And deeply let be into the body. Letting the body draw you into oneness with it. As if letting the body do the knowing. or as if letting the body meditate you. And now, while feeling your breathing within the body, notice any sense of holding on to the breathing process. And let any sense of holding on just relax. So you deeply let be into the bodily feeling of the breath. Letting the feeling of the breath draw you into oneness with it. As if letting the breath do the knowing. Or as if letting the breath meditate you. And now become aware of any thoughts arising in the mind. And notice any sense of grasping or holding on to the thinking process or to any mental construct. Notice any holding on to a sense of self or thought or framework of mind. And let that feeling of holding on just relax deep within. So give the heart and mind permission in that way to just release its grip into total openness. Letting the mind just settle back into the natural openness that's already here, beyond reference points or beyond holding on, like space. And let this total spaciousness of awareness draw you into oneness with it. Letting this utter openness of awareness do the knowing or the meditating. Just let this utter openness of awareness do the knowing or the meditating. Let all the patterns of thought and feeling that arise just unwind and release within this pervasive openness. With a sense of deep allowing, of just letting everything be. And we can let the atmosphere or the felt sense of the meditation just continue to resonate, as with all meditations, actually. So in this practice, this third letting be of mind, the letting be of body and breath, kind of establishes a platform or sets a kind of a sense of things that the mind can then kind of catch on to. That the mind could also, like with the body and the breath, the mind could also let itself be drawn more and more into oneness with something that's already here. In this case, the basic openness and clarity of awareness. So this third letting be of mind enters us into a meditative state that's called in Tibetan Denme Shine, which means calm abiding without support, or tranquil abiding without support, without focusing on a particular object, just the basic openness and clarity of awareness itself. So in that letting be of mind, we just settle back into the pervasive openness and clarity and simplicity that's always present in the background of our awareness. No matter what we're aware of in the foreground, that basic openness and clarity are always present in the background, even if we have not noticed that much before. And that background of openness and cognizance is inherently stable, even though our sense perceptions in the foreground are shifting and changing. But this background of openness and cognizance is stable. We can learn to settle into it and come from that stable kind of way of being or place. So in shamatha without support, the mind learns to settle into the stability of that cognizant background, naturally wide open and radiant, from which spacious qualities of warmth and acceptance and deep allowing and care and love and compassion and inner peace and groundedness and responsiveness can come forth more easily, because we're not so caught up in shifting kind of habitual reactions to our sense perceptions and thoughts. We're settled back into a more stable dimension of our awareness. So in this, overall in this whole training, these practices that we've been exploring, the field of care, meditation, compassionate presence to feelings, importantly, the releasing phase in each of those practices that I talked about last night. Learning to let the loving and compassionate qualities that we experience as we're held in that field of care or in that compassionate way of being present to our feelings, those loving or compassionate qualities help our mind in the releasing phase of those meditations to trust, relax, and release into the spacious source of those loving qualities in our underlying awareness. That's the releasing phase of all the meditations. So this letting be meditation enhances our ability to release in that way, to release the grip in our mind and relax into the basic openness and simple clarity of awareness. So all these meditations kind of build on each other. The more the mind relaxes into the basic openness within our experience, the more freely our underlying capacities of care, compassion, love, warmth, and so forth, responsiveness, the more freely those loving capacities can unfold. They're always available in our underlying awareness, but they're usually held back from the constricted or contracted way our minds hold on to ourselves. So as we learn to relax that grip and release in the releasing phase or letting be meditation into the basic openness here, the basic space or spaciousness of it, our experience, then the more freely that the loving qualities can emerge and unfold. And the more we learn to let these loving qualities emerge, the more our mind, with the help of those loving qualities, can increasingly trust their source in the basic openness of our underlying awareness. So there's kind of a synergy here of love and spacious awareness that can empower each other in the practices that we're learning. So, okay, for now, there are some questions here. So basically, all I'm saying is if you go back, you look at it, if we look at the handout with all these meditations we've learned so far, we've been focusing on field of care meditation number 2, compassionate presence to feelings meditation number 4. And then last night and now we did the letting be meditation number 5 in the handout. If you look at those, you'll see there's a kind of, it establishes a framework for a kind of synergy of experiencing loving qualities on the one hand and releasing into spacious awareness on the other. And those two ways of being, experiencing loving qualities and the releasing into spacious awareness, are helping each other. They help each other. They empower each other. We can release more as the mind trusts more that it's safe to release. And it learns to trust by experiencing the loving qualities that come from what we are releasing into, our basic awareness. So that spacious awareness and loving qualities help open each other up more and more. So there are some questions that came up today, from last night into today. So shall I go ahead and start replying or responding to those? Would that be okay? It's not upsetting? Okay. Someone asks, please explain how shamatha without support, which is this, what I was just summarizing, how that relates to the Theravada Buddhist concept of the 4 jhanas, which are the four jhanas, are states of very profound concentration that are cultivated in Theravada traditions of practice. So how does what I'm calling shamatha without support, drawing from Tibetan traditions, relate to the 4 jhanas of Theravada Buddhist traditions? So both of these, actually the jhanas, these states of really profound concentration in the Theravada system, they are also forms of shamatha. Shamatha really means tranquil abiding. Really, really deep collectedness, concentration, and tranquility. So the jhanas are forms of shamatha and are called such in Theravada traditions as well. But shamatha without support, the way I'm introducing it here, is coming from Tibetan Buddhism. And is a stage of practice prominent within certain traditions from Tibet. In particular, what I'm drawing from here are traditions called Mahamudra and Dzogchen, which are part of the Kagyu and Nyingma traditions of Tibetan Buddhism. And in those traditions of Tibetan Buddhism, as in Zen, Buddhist East Asian traditions, there's an emphasis on the innate capacity of our Buddha nature. There's an emphasis on underlying innate capacities, kind of like powers of our awareness that are already available here, but are being obstructed or impeded by our habits of mind, by our habits of interpretation and reaction. So the habits that we're in, socialized and also individual habits of how we are in the habit of reacting to things interpreting what we're experiencing and then reacting to it, those habits are actively impeding or obstructing underlying capacities, underlying capacities of love, care, connection, warmth, acceptance, discernment, wisdom, responsiveness, courage, equanimity, and so forth. Those underlying capacities are innate, are available, but are being held back. You following? That's a strong emphasis in the traditions from Tibet I'm drawing from, stronger than in many Theravada traditions. And that means that shamatha, this tranquil abiding or calm abiding, is brought forward as a natural capacity of our basic awareness, a natural capacity for profound tranquility and concentration, an underlying capacity for it that can be brought forward very naturally in simple ways. And then we can learn how to get used to that, rather than the focus being on effortful learning to generate states of more and more powerful concentration. Not that as the main focus, but learning how to settle back into an underlying capacity for deep, stable settledness. How to, in a sense, settle back into that capacity, not have to create it or make it. You see the difference? So that's the emphasis in the tradition that I'm drawing from, and you can hear that really in the ways that I'm leading the meditations. So shamatha without support is brought out as a natural capacity, underlying capacity of our awareness for deep tranquility and concentration. And that power of deep tranquility and deep stability of mind can also deepen naturally into a further dimension of awareness, which is a non-dual insight into the deep nature of mind, or a non-dual recognition of our Buddha nature. In a sense, shamatha without support as a deep tranquility can, in a natural kind of way, can open further in such a way that the mind, to say it a certain way, the mind reverts to its most natural primordial state of non-dual emptiness and pure cognizance, which is a direct recognition of the deep nature of mind, the deep empty nature of mind, or a self-recognition by our Buddha nature of itself. So I don't want to overcomplicate this, but the point is that in these Tibetan traditions, shamatha without support can deepen naturally into a very profound, non-dual, direct insight into the deep nature, empty nature of mind, which generally happens with the assistance of other practices for purifying the mind, deepening commitment to fullest awakening for the sake of all other beings, which is bodhicitta, generating much positive karmic power through various practices of offering and being offered up, and also with specific methods of looking right into the empty nature of mind. Those additional practices can help shamatha without support deepen into non-dual insight. And that's an approach within the traditions I'm drawing from to what's called vipassana in Mahamudra and Dzogchen. Direct insight, non-dual insight, kind of awareness. If you want to, since this question came up of comparing these systems, how it was asked, how does this shamatha without support and the kind of insight that I'm talking about that comes from Tibetan tradition, how does that relate to Theravadan understandings of the jhanas, states of deep concentration. A good book to look at if you're really interested in looking at the different systems and how they differ and compare. I think one of the best introductions to Buddhism is by Peter Harvey. His book is called Introduction to Buddhism. I think it's a pretty excellent summary of not only the history of the various Buddhist traditions, but the various understandings, comparable and differing understandings within them, and also their meditation and ritual practices. And particularly in chapter 11 of that book, Peter Harvey's Introduction to Buddhism, chapter 11, you will actually see these different meditation systems compared. So that would be some fuller background on it, okay? Then someone else is asking, I did not realize that shamatha without support is still dualistic. Please comment. So I commented on that last night, and the only reason to bring that up really is that there's a further kind of dimension of deeper knowing, this kind of recognition of the deep, empty nature of mind, which is entirely non-dual. And it's in contrast with that deep recognition of insight that a practitioner could notice that shamatha without support is actually still, in a very subtle way, is still maintained within a kind of a frame of reference, a very subtle sense of someone meditating on something, meditating on or resting in the basic openness and clarity of awareness. That's a very subtle dualistic sense of subject and object and framework or reference point, which is completely abandoned or obliterated in the direct recognition of the nature of mind, which is a further dimension of realization, let's say. So it's by contrast between shamatha on the one hand and vipassana, or a deep non-dual insight, that that a practitioner can recognize that shamatha without support, even though it seems totally wide open and clear, also still has subtle conceptual frames of reference within it, which may not be fully conscious. Okay, so that's getting a bit technical. So those of you who don't need to get that technical, just forget all that. Don't worry about it. What I'm really trying to do is just introduce some pretty simple practices. But since some people, it can be helpful and they are asking, then I do need to respond also, and that can be helpful for some people too. Okay, here comes another question. How do I hold a part of me in the kinds of these meditations, field of care or compassionate presence to feelings that you introduced, John? So how do I hold a part of me in that field of care or compassionate presence, a part of me that seems dead? I recovered from a head injury and I feel like nothing can get into this part of me. It's like a scar tissue. I wonder how to enliven this part that does not seem to have availability to healing energy. Could you hear the question? So what I want to say is that to the questioner, your question seems to indicate that you are trying to get this dead part of you to come alive or to heal by doing the meditations. Of course, that seems like a reasonable thing to want. But I would ask you, please, to listen again and explore the meditations that I led in the prior 2 weeks, April 16th and 23rd. So field of care meditation when I first introduced it. And then the compassionate presence to feelings meditation that I led on April 23rd. And you'll notice in the instruction of those meditations, and also when you look at your handout for those meditations, meditation 2 and meditation 4, you'll see in the instruction there is no attempt on our part during the meditation to get any parts of us or any of our feelings to change. Nor are we trying to get them to heal. We are not trying to do anything to them. we bring no agenda to them. Now, it's true, what might be motivating us to even do such meditations is the desire for change and healing, of course. Of course. But when we actually then do the meditation, that's the distinction I want to draw. When you are actually doing it, you have no agenda for any part of you. And by part, I mean any sense of self that shows up, any feeling that you feel. You are not bringing any agenda to it. You are not trying to get it to be different. You are not trying to change it. You are not trying to heal it. So what are you doing in those meditations? You are just sensing or imagining that any part of you or any feeling that is here is welcomed into that space of deep acceptance and warmth and care. All you are doing is learning how to, this is really quite literal. I really mean it. All you're doing in the meditation, look at the instruction, is just learning how to welcome any part of you that shows up, that is any sense of self, and any feeling that shows up, how to welcome it into a space of total acceptance, totally allowing it to be here. A space of simple acceptance and compassion in which to let that part of you or that feeling find its own way of being here. You are not imposing any expectation on it to get it to heal or change or be different at all. Trying to raise my hand up into the camera. At all. Nothing. Nada. No expectation. So we do not expect any immediate sense of profound healing or anything like that. That expectation itself will impede the process of learning how to provide a profoundly safe space for all parts of us and all feelings to find their own way of being here, free from our interference, free from our agendas, and free from our expectations upon them. If we learn to follow the instruction better and better, and it's a real learning, I don't mean to be lambasting you, I just mean it is a process, it is learning, it takes time, but I'm just pointing it out. When you follow the instruction, all that we're learning to do is allow the parts of us and feelings that come to find their own way of being here, to find their own place, in their own time, in their own way, in this space of compassion that we are learning to allow them to have here. Then things can unfold in their own time, in their own way as they need. And as a matter of fact, that will probably be deeply healing. But not because we are cleverly doing the healing to our feelings. We do not know how to do that. We may think we do, but we don't. Because our thinking mind does not understand our feelings on the level of feeling. So healing can come out of this process, but the way that it comes is that the feelings themselves, when they're provided the space that they need to find their own way of being here, of settling in their own time, and of healing in their own way that only they know how to do, then healing will come. Okay, is that sort of clear? We're learning not to get the feelings to change, go away, or quickly be healed. We're learning not to try to do that. What we're learning is how not to try to do that, but instead to deeply allow the feelings to have all the space they need to heal themselves which they cannot do as long as we keep pretending that our cognitive thinking mind knows how to heal them. You following? This is a very distinct approach. It's a very clear approach, but it's a very, very different way of being with our feelings than most of us are used to. I realize that. So it takes time and exploration and repetition of practice. And it does need a teacher to point this out, often repeatedly. We will tend to bring our familiar agendas to the practices of field of care and compassion presence to feelings. Our familiar ways of relating to our feelings, we will tend to bring that, wanting them to go away, wanting to change them, wanting to analyze them, wanting to understand them cognitively, as if that will give us control over them. Wanting to heal them on our own terms. You, feeling, get healed. We will tend to bring those kinds of agendas into the practice because that's how we are conditioned. So then I'm saying to you, we can, it takes time. We're used to that. We will tend to do that, I know. But we can learn better and better with repetition how to let all that go. How to provide a space of simple warmth and acceptance and deep allowing and simple care that lets our feelings begin to feel safe enough with us in that space that they can begin to relax, trust, settle, and heal themselves in time on their own schedule, not on ours for them. We can learn that, but it takes time, repetition, and it does take a teacher to keep pointing it out because most of us are not used to this way of being with our feelings at all. Okay, is that sort of clear? And I really appreciate the question because it raised all that up, actually. It's embedded in the question. And it's really helpful to all of us. Here comes another question. Is that okay if I respond to another question? That won't be a problem? Okay. So another great question. The person asks, can we heal our ancestral wounds by deeply allowing our feelings, resting with them and letting them be? That's the compassionate presence to feelings practice. Noticing the feeling, emotional or physical, deeply allowing it, letting it have all the space it needs to find its own place, allowing it, resting with it, and letting things be. So the questioner is asking, can we actually heal our ancestral wounds with that way? That is this a way to not pass on generational trauma? And yes, absolutely, this compassionate presence to feelings practice can support that. But again, I want to say that, to be clear, we are not healing our feelings. So the questioner was asking, can we heal our ancestral wounds, our ancestral wounded feelings? I know it may seem like I'm just picking on grammar and use of English, but that's not really the point. It's very, very subtle, but many of us are conditioned, even in the way that we use language, to assume that what's going on here is me learning how to heal my feelings. So again, I'm just pointing out, it's a wonderful question, but we are not healing our feelings. We are learning how to let the feelings heal themselves. That's what we're learning. It takes time and repetition, but we can. Because as feelings begin to feel safer with us, allowed to have that space, that space of compassion and acceptance that they're not used to feeling because we're so much in the habit of suppressing, denying, avoiding, rejecting, or distracting ourselves from them. We're so much in the habit of that, most of us, that our feelings are not used to being provided a space of total acceptance and allowing. They're not used to that. But as we learn how to do that better, how to not do anything to them better, they begin to trust us more. They begin to feel safer with us. And then they can begin to deeply relax and heal on their own. And as that begins to happen, then more inspiration and confidence in the practice emerges for us. And that's why we can learn it better and better. It becomes quite inspiring or quite remarkable. I have to say, as I began learning this practice from one of my own teachers, Tibetan teachers, Tsogno Rinpoche, I couldn't believe it at first, how simple it was and how amazing this possibility was. So it becomes like inspiring. And then we can really learn it better and better because we're really inspired to do so. Second question, the same questioner is asking, it seems to me though that it's not possible to sit with our feelings in a simple accepting way for more than a very short time because our mind is always oriented toward manipulating our feelings. And it's true, as I just said, I think for most of us, actually maybe all of us, we are really conditioned and habituated to rejecting, denying, avoiding, or trying to make something out of our feelings cognitively, never just providing a space for them to find their own way here, a space of care, a kind of a gently welcoming space. We're not used to that. So of course, that's a big learning. But we can learn better how to do that with practice. And also, I would say that we need to let what we think we know, like the questioner was saying, seems to me that it's not possible to just be there with our feelings in such a simple, accepting way for more than a very, very short time, because the mind will just keep, engaging in its activities in reaction to those feelings. The mind will just keep doing that. So what I want to say is that there's a need to let what we think we know about feelings, or about anything really, to let what we think we know be informed by repeated meditation practice. Otherwise, what we think we know will definitely obstruct what may be possible. Definitely it will. Like if I think I know that I could only be with my feelings in this very deeply allowing way for only a very short time, if I think I know that, that itself will definitely become an obstruction to learning how to actually be with feelings in a deeply allowing way, spacious way, more and more and more. And I have to say, not only from my own experience, but from others that I've known who have practiced this for some time, this is definitely possible. No one has to believe that, but if we think we know that it's not possible, then we will certainly make it not possible. That's for sure. Then another question comes up, another person. At some points during the day when I notice I'm having a difficult feeling, I try to practice the field of care meditation, but that often seems just kind of mental or abstract. So I don't feel my emotion enfolded in that field of care. So how better to practice at such moments in my day? So could you all hear the question? The setup of it is, during the day when I notice I am having a painful feeling, I try to practice the field of care meditation, but that's hard then. So then how are we to practice the field of care meditation repeatedly throughout our day, as you have suggested, John? So what I'm suggesting by reconnecting with the field of care meditation, or any of these meditations, also compassionate presence to feelings is a good one to reconnect with many times a day. That reconnecting is not first or primarily at the moment that you have a very difficult feeling or painful situation. Rather, more and more routinely throughout your day, peppered throughout your day, for a minute or two here, a minute there, a half a minute here, routinely, not first or foremost just when you have a difficult feeling or difficult situation, not that. Routinely, like right now, why not? Here we are. Field of care. Whatever feelings one is experiencing, just letting them be embraced in the spacious qualities of that caring moment or sense of benefactor, connection. Here it is. But this was not a particularly difficult moment. Just like that for 30 seconds. If we do that repeatedly throughout our day, what we're doing is learning more and more. It takes some familiarization and repetition, but gradually we actually can reach a point where it's becoming easier to access the loving qualities of our underlying awareness, these qualities of basic warmth, acceptance, deep allowing, inner spaciousness, inner safety, inner well-being, a little bit of joy or uplift. We learn that we can actually access them more and more easily, more at will, but it takes a lot of repetition. With the help of either of these kinds of meditation, field of care or compassionate presence to feelings. That's what I mean by repeating it, reconnecting with it throughout your day. Not waiting till you're in a difficult situation. And now, okay, field of care, where are you? Where are you? But I hate this guy. This guy tried to kill me. He just almost ran over me with his car. I want to strangle this guy. Field of care, please, serenity now, serenity now. If you watch Seinfeld, Kramer used to say, serenity now, serenity now. It's not going to work. But if we learn through repetition to reconnect more and more often routinely in our day, not only or mainly first at difficult moments, then when we do have a difficult moment, the time will get shorter and shorter between when we're just overwhelmed by our painful feeling in the difficult moment and when we can notice that loving qualities are available here now. The time will get shorter. I think I mentioned this in an earlier Q&A, but maybe I used to, when someone cut me off in traffic, honked at me and then gave me the finger, which is a good kind of experience here in Boston. Maybe I would be irate for a week thinking about that guy. I hate him. And then maybe it gets closer to just a few days. And maybe it becomes just one day. Maybe it becomes just 2 hours and then maybe 1 hour. And then by golly, even in recent years or recent months, somebody cuts me off or whatever, honks his horn. And I'm clicking into these loving qualities within even just a minute or 2 minutes, or even surprisingly, right in it, they just start to unfold. And now, and I'll talk about this next week, my perception of the other person is also now opening into more of a sense of, oh my gosh, look what we're all caught in. Some sense of compassion for what we're all caught in. Because the part of me that's so upset is experiencing itself as held in a space of basic acceptance and compassion sooner after the incident. As that part of me experiences that, then my lens or perspective on the other person begins to open and can become a little bit more aware that there's a human there who's really caught up also, and some compassion for what we're all going through here together. You sort of follow what I'm saying? So that sense of repeatedly reconnecting with the meditation throughout our day, even for little moments, is not mainly, oh, when I'm really having a difficult time, then I'm going to try to do this meditation. That won't work. We accustom to the meditation often in our day routinely, and then when we have difficult moments, our ability to access these underlying qualities of our awareness will be available to us more and more. Thich Nhat Hanh, I remember in one of the books I use at Boston College, said something like this, that he said, people often ask me, how am I supposed to be loving towards someone who breaks into my house and threatens me with violence and wants to steal everything? And Thich Nhat Hanh said, well, you're probably not going to be very good in response to that. That if you practice for 10 years, and when somebody breaks into your house, the full power of your practice that's available to you after 10 years of practice, that'll be there. Then you can see what's possible in the way you are with that person. And I thought that was a good answer. So I'm not saying 10 years, but I am saying a lot of repetition routinely. And then we have a lot more available when we're really under the gun, as it were. Then someone asks, how do I prioritize which emotion I should focus on in these practices? And my response to that is just focus on the one you're feeling now. Another person asks, when returning to the meditation frequently during the day, like I just was describing, do we just touch on the loving feelings, or do we do the entire meditation multiple times a day? And that's a really good question. What I'm saying is we actually do the entire meditation, but if you look at it, this is, let's say, meditation 2, field of care, or meditation 4, compassionate presence to feelings. If you look at it, if you do that a few hundred times, because you're touching in on it for a short time throughout your day, a number of times or many times, it becomes very familiar, and it's really not long and it's not complicated. So field of care, what does that mean? Caring moment that makes you happy to recall, or a benefactor or spiritual figure that's very meaningful to you, uplifting, and then you're in it. There's no long time to do that. You're just in it. You are in that caring moment, or that benefactor or figure is with you now, here, now. I'm doing it right now. It's instant with familiarity. And now you're just letting any feelings or parts of you that are here just be steeped in those loving qualities, or just deeply allowed to be here. These feelings or parts of you just deeply allowed to be here within this spacious, compassionate quality. That's immediate. It's not long. I'm just doing it right now. And then when you're ready, you just relax into, let that spacious sense of care, warmth, acceptance, and compassion that's holding all of your feelings, just relax right into that, the feeling of that, the felt sense of that spacious acceptance, warmth, care, and just let your mind fall open. There, done. It's actually quicker than that. I took some time because I had to explain it. So as we familiarize with it, it's very quick. You say, well, do you do the whole meditation? Well, there isn't really that much to do. It's that fast, not that complicated. And that's how it goes. Compassionate presence to feelings, even more direct. Another person asks a great question. Regarding field of care meditation, I've done some attachment work in psychotherapy, where I learned that different caring moments can help heal different attachment scripts. So I talked about that my first night or second night here. Do you feel that any caring moment, when fully felt, will eventually open up to all the other qualities, loving qualities? But it seems to me that we need different aspects of care, like different caring moments, to heal different parts of ourselves. And I love that question. It's a great question. I think it's really true. So from one perspective, it's really good to try to recall, explore, and as we begin entering into the practice, we can begin to remember more and more caring moments from throughout our life, because we're also aware of our attachment scripts, which is the tendency to that many of us carry from our childhood to ignore signs of care coming from around us for fear of getting hurt again. But once we realize that that's our attachment script that many of us have, we can realize that actually there have been many little moments of caring connection that are quite uplifting for us that have been going on all along, even between two other people that we're just witnessing, or a person and their dog. And it's like uplifting for us. And then also many little moments, even with so-called strangers, just smiling upon us or happy to let us in or let us ahead. You know, even in Boston, someone lets me ahead in the traffic. It's amazing. What a blessing. What a caring moment. Can't believe it. I'm only half joking. Anyhow, there are thousands of them. So we can notice them more and more and more. And I absolutely agree with the questioner. The more we notice, the more it can really inform our practice. At the same time, there's this other side of things, which is that any caring moment is accessing underlying qualities and capacities of our awareness, innate capacities. And therefore, if we really settle into any caring moment more and more and more, I think more and more of those underlying qualities and capacities can also be evoked by it. That's also true, I think. Okay, I'll finish for now with this one, which is really important. Are you ready? And then we'll stop with this one. But this is going to take a couple minutes, just a couple, but I think you'll all be really interested in it, okay? So this concerns injustice. So this questioner is asking this great question. The only feeling that I cannot embrace with loving acceptance is the feeling of injustice, particularly personal injustice coming from outside of me, the way I'm being treated. I fear that acceptance of this feeling of injustice might equal acquiescence and would therefore open me up to unfair or dangerous vulnerabilities and would be at odds with self-care and self-preservation. So how do I approach this? Did you all follow the question? Pretty cool question. So she or he is saying, the only feeling I cannot embrace with loving acceptance is the feeling of injustice. So how can I approach this? So here's my response. To deeply accept our own feelings does not mean that we accept intolerable situations. So the aim here is to learn how to accept our experience, how to accept our experience of situations in a healing, empowering way, not to accept all situations. I'll just repeat that because there's a difference. What we're learning to do is to accept our own experience, including our experience of any situation, in a healing, empowering, accepting way. We're not learning to accept all situations. There's a big difference there. So some of us live in social settings and work within social structures that need to be challenged for the good of all. In an oppressive environment, we can get so caught up in our painful feelings that we can become paralyzed, or we can get so continually caught up in hurt and anger that we are unable to access our capacity to challenge effectively what needs to be challenged. So to learn to be compassionately present to our own feelings so they can begin to heal themselves can bring out powers of inner safeness, discernment, equanimity, resilience, and responsiveness that empower us to challenge things much more effectively with care and compassion for everyone involved. In other words, this practice of learning how to provide a compassionate space for our feelings to deeply heal empowers work for social change, empowers social activism in its most effective form. And by most effective form, I mean people who embodied this kind of approach, like Martin Luther King, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Rosa Parks, the Dalai Lama, Harriet Tubman, so to learn how to accept our experience and to learn how to accept our feelings can empower work for change. Whereas rejecting our feelings, suppressing them, or being more and more utterly caught up in them can obstruct our ability to work for necessary change. So that's my response. So we're at the end of our time. There were some other good questions, but we always run out, never able to answer all of them. But I think these were really good ones. So thank you all for coming. It's great to see you all. And I think we'll end here, okay? Great, thank you.